Greetings, global class. Welcome to an age of revolutions. This is for global history and geography too, and we'll cover chapter 2 of the curriculum on the scientific revolution and enlightenment. So let's get started. So scientific revolution started around the 1500s and 1600s, and like any revolution, this was a period of great change. It wasn't really a violent revolution. It was a revolution around the questioning of old ideas. So what do we get in this time period? New ideas about the universe. Now, what was the old way of thinking in the Middle Ages? Typically, European scholars believed that Earth was at the center of the universe. Okay, however, a man named Nicholas Copernicus discovered that the universe was actually heliocentric, which means sun-centered, right? Helios is our sun, heliocentric, sun in the center of the universe. Galileo Galilei used a telescope to confirm Nicholas Copernicus's theory, which led to the Catholic Church getting all bent out of shape, and they put Galileo on trial, where in response Galileo publicly took back his ideas so that he would not be punished or killed. Another important person to remember in this time period is Sir Isaac Newton, who proved the existence of gravity. Okay, and take a minute in your fill-in guide to answer the question on the left-hand side of the screen. Which individual is credited with developing the scientific theory in the above diagram? Fun fact, that diagram showed up on the June 2019 Transition Regents exam, so you might see it this year, who knows? So what were some other new ways of thinking that emerged as a result of the scientific revolution? Well, you have the scientific method, which you've probably used in your science classes or in your labs, and it's basically using experimentation and observation instead of listening to past authorities, your minister, your monarch, your governor. Another person to remember would be Rene Descartes, who suggested that we should rely on human reasoning rather than tradition to make a judgment. So you can see that the scientific revolution deals a lot with people thinking for themselves rationally, as opposed to just following old traditions and authority figures, which is going to make some people a bit jealous, let's say. More on that later. So this leads us into the Enlightenment, which is just the application of the scientific method to solve society's problems. What were society's problems at this time period? Inequality between the classes. You have a little group of super rich, super powerful people governing over everyone else, the little guy. You have government tyranny. You have monarchs, absolute monarchs in this time period that are basically taking control and subjugating most of their population through taxation, unfair legal practices. There's also religious intolerance. If you did not follow the same belief system as your leadership, you would be killed, run out of town, so on and so forth. Leading thinkers of the Enlightenment, or philosophers that you should remember for this course, John Locke would be a good one to remember, and his main idea was that all people possess the right to life, liberty, and property. These are also known as natural rights. Natural rights are rights that we are born with, and no government, monarch, king, or queen is allowed to take those away. Montesquieu is another important figure because Montesquieu believed that the government should be split into separate branches. Think about our own government. It's split into separate branches. Well, that comes from Montesquieu. Voltaire believed that people should have the right to free speech and free religion. Again, look at our own government, our own rights to free speech and religion. This is where we got it from. And Rousseau, to finish up, believed that the people should work for the common good, okay, the good of the collective, of the entire population, not just of the good of the leadership, a king or queen, or the clergy, at their own expense of, again, those natural rights. What was the impact of the Enlightenment? A lot of governments are going to try and censor Enlightenment ideas because they're in charge, and a lot of the ideas of the Enlightenment were about questioning the leadership and the status quo. So government and church leaders are going to arrest Enlightenment figures. They're going to ban books and pamphlets written by Enlightenment thinkers. They're going to burn books and pamphlets. So your base leadership is not going to like these ideas so much. Who does like the ideas, though? Enlightened despots. An enlightened despot is an absolute monarch that adopted Enlightenment ideas. And I've given you a few examples to remember. Catherine the Great of Russia would be a good example to use of an enlightened despot. She promoted women's education and religious tolerance. Maria Theresa of Austria, she finally forced nobles and clergy to pay taxes, not just the peasants. And she also instilled compulsory primary education, so childhood education across Austria. Maria Theresa's son, Joseph II of Austria, continued with his mother's enlightened despot ideals, and he chose government officials based on merit rather than which family that they were born into and whether or not they were loyal to him. He ended censorship in the media, abolished serfdom, that servitude system. However, sadly, many of his forms were overturned after he left power, so kind of successful, but not quite. Other big ideas to come out of the Enlightenment were ideas of democracy and nationalism. Democracy meant like rule by the people. Okay, remember ancient Greece, ancient Rome. Nationalism is the loyalty to one's country, a sense of camaraderie based on the nation that you live in and your common culture, language, customs, so on and so forth. These ideas are going to lead to, again, challenges to authority, okay, because we get a lot of these ideas that natural rights, the right to life, liberty, and property, a monarch shouldn't be able to take away my natural rights. So the spread of these ideas lead to many political revolutions, like the American Revolution. And then the French are going to be inspired by the Americans, have their own revolutions, and then the Latin American countries are going to be inspired by the Americans and the French and have their own revolutions and kick Spain and Portugal off their turf. So this is a big thing to take away from the Enlightenment, the ideas of nationalism, democracy, political revolutions, bloody revolutions, all three of them too. So people are going to die in order to spread democracy, grow nationalism, and get their natural rights. So to wrap up, what should you look for on the Regents exam and review just ongoing throughout the year? This topic did not really show up too much on the June or August 2019 exam, so maybe in June 2020 you'll see something about the Enlightenment on the Regents exam. As I said before, Copernicus's heliocentric model did show up as a part 1 question on the June 2019 transition exam, so we know that this topic is in the minds of those making the test. We'll see what happens with that. Enduring issues essays. So what kind of enduring issues should you think about? Should you get some Enlightenment era documents in part 3 of the exam? Nationalism, obviously, right? Because that's going to lead to political revolutions. Also, the enduring issues, technology, power, conflict could be used if you get some Enlightenment documents because there's a lot of conflict and power conflict. Church versus science with the scientific revolution, monarchy versus democracy with your American, French, and Latin American revolutions. So there's a lot going on in this time period, in this unit. You may see it on the exam, but go back to this multiple times throughout the year just to get some review. That's all for this time, and I will see you all later. Enjoy.